Welcome to Sleepcast, probably the most boring podcast in the world. Sleepcast is created to help you relax, slow down, and gently drift off to sleep. There's nothing you need to remember and nowhere else you need to be. Simply get comfortable, close your eyes, and allow tonight's quiet story to carry you away. And now, we hand things over to our two hosts for today's episode. Rest well and enjoy.
So if you think back to the summer of 2015, there was this moment where a guy walks into a federal courtroom in Hartford, Connecticut, and he officially declares bankruptcy.
Right, I remember that. The media just, they completely lost their minds over it.
Oh, they had an absolute field day.
Yeah.
I mean, the headlines practically wrote themselves. They were painting this picture of, yet another wildly successful entertainer who had just recklessly blown through a massive fortune.
Yeah, they were calling it this humiliating failure. Like, it was the ultimate game over screen for a guy who, up until then, had seemingly conquered the entire world.
But the thing is, if you look beneath the surface, beneath all those sensational headlines, it wasn't a collapse at all. Like, not even close.
Not when you actually look at the filings.
Right. If you dig into the actual corporate strategy at play, it was arguably one of the most brilliant, cutthroat corporate maneuvers of that entire decade.
It really was. I mean, it was a tactical shield, and it was deployed by a man who, frankly, learned about survival in an environment that was way more dangerous than any bankruptcy court.
Exactly. And that is exactly why we are here today. Welcome to a brand new deep dive crafted specifically for you, our favorite learner. Because today we are unpacking the life, the career, and honestly the absolute strategic genius of Curtis Jackson.
Better known to the entire world as 50 Cent.
Yes, 50 Cent. And to understand the boardroom tactician that he is today, we really have to look at the entire board, which means we are synthesizing a massive amount of documentation for you today.
Oh, it is a huge stack of sources. We are pulling from comprehensive biographical profiles of his early life, plus some really intense deep dives, including Wikipedia archives on his groundbreaking debut album.
We've also got extensive hip-hop history articles that chronicle his multi-decade war with Ja Rule and the Murder Inc. record label, which is just wild.
It is. And on the business side, we are looking at legal blogs that analyze that exact Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing, along with entertainment news reports about his massive television deals, specifically with FOX.
And finally, we're looking at the official foundational documents of his philanthropic organization, the G-Unity Foundation. So our mission today is to figure out how a man who started selling drugs on street corners at age 12...
and who literally survived being shot 9 times at point-blank range.
Right. How that guy managed to not only survive, but strategically conquer the global music industry, completely dismantle his rivals, outsmart the federal legal system, and build a multi-tiered corporate empire.
It is a massive journey, but, to really understand the mogul, we first have to understand the crucible that forged him. You just cannot comprehend his business acumen without understanding the sheer peril of his origin story.
Yeah, if you were listening to this on your commute right now, or maybe you're out walking the dog, try to actually place yourself in this environment, because it reads less like a standard biography and more like a really dark, gritty superhero origin story.
It really does. So Curtis James Jackson III was born on July 6, 1975 in Southside Jamaica, Queens.
Which in the late 70s and through the 80s was just ground zero for some of the most intense economic and social devastation in all of New York City.
Absolutely. The crack epidemic hit that neighborhood incredibly hard. And his mother was a single parent who was actually a drug dealer operating in that volatile underground economy.
And then when Curtis is only 8 years old, she dies in a fire. An unexplained fire.
Yeah. And that detail alone, an unexplained fire in the context of the Queen's drug trade, I mean, that hints at a level of ambient violence and trauma that most people just can't even fathom.
Right. It implies something much darker than just an accident. So he's orphaned at 8, and his grandmother steps in to raise him. But, the gravitational pull of that neighborhood street economy was just so incredibly strong.
It was inescapable for a lot of kids, although, interestingly, he actually had early aspirations to be a professional boxer.
Wait, really? A boxer?
Yeah, he was fighting at the junior level, which I think tells us a lot about his innate drive, right? He was naturally drawn to combat, to discipline, and to, solitary preparation.
That makes a lot of sense given his personality later on. But the economics of his reality eventually overpowered the boxing ring. Because by age 12, he starts selling drugs.
He is operating right in the middle of the crack era in New York, a period that was defined by extreme territorial violence and really aggressive policing.
And you can't stay in that game forever without consequences. So when he's 19, the consequences arrive. He sells 4 vials of cocaine to an undercover police officer.
And then just 3 weeks after that, authorities raid his home. They find a significant stash of crack and heroin.
So he is staring down a massive sentence, right? Like 3 to 9 years in a state penitentiary.
He was. But the system actually offered him a pivot. Instead of hard time, he was sent to a shock incarceration boot camp.
Okay, a boot camp. And that's where he actually earns his GED, right?
Exactly. And that boot camp is a critical inflection point for him because it provides this rigid militaristic structure that seems to organize his pre-existing discipline, the boxing discipline we talked about.
Well, that's a good connection.
Yeah. And it's during this period that he's already experimenting with music, he's writing rhymes, and he officially adopts the moniker 50 Cent.
Which, as we learned from the sources, isn't just a random name he pulled out of thin air. Like, it meant something very specific.
Oh, it was a highly calculated branding exercise. He took the name from Kelvin Martin, who was a notorious Brooklyn stick-up kid from the 1980s.
The original 50 Cent.
Right. And the original 50 Cent was infamous for being completely fearless, for robbing people regardless of their status or how much power they had in the streets.
So by taking that specific name, Curtis Jackson is making a massive statement of intent before he even has a record deal. Like, he's signaling to everyone that he is dangerous and willing to take whatever he wants.
Exactly. So he comes out of this boot camp, he's armed with this new moniker, he's got his GED, and he starts making these aggressive inroads into the New York hip-hop scene.
And he actually gets introduced to hip-hop royalty pretty early on. He meets the legendary jam master Jay from Run DMC.
Which is a huge deal. Jay recognizes his raw talent immediately. He produces an unreleased album for him, and more importantly, he teaches him the actual mechanics of writing a structured song, not just rhyming over a beat, but crafting a hook.
Right, turning street rhymes into a marketable product. And that mentorship pays off because he eventually lands a major deal with Columbia Records. He records an album titled Power of the Dollar.
And this is where he starts making a massive amount of noise with a track called How to Rob.
Okay, we have to talk about How to Rob because the sheer audacity of this song is unbelievable.
It really is. To contextualize it, normally in hip-hop, newcomers try to align themselves with established stars to gain some traction, like get a feature from someone famous.
But 50 Cent takes the exact opposite approach.
He
drops this track where he aggressively and honestly, kind of comically, details his explicit plans to physically rob the biggest stars in the industry.
He names everyone. P. Diddy, Jay-Z, Missy Elliott, Big Pun, Wu-Tang Clan. Nobody is safe on this track.
It's just pure audacity. He is a relative nobody at this point, and he is directly threatening the ruling class of music. And it works. It gets him massive attention. Some people are furious, some are laughing, but absolutely everyone is paying attention to 50 Cent.
But then, all of that momentum, everything he had built, comes to a violent crashing halt on May 24th, the year 2000.
The afternoon that permanently altered the trajectory of his life, and really the whole music industry.
Yeah. So he is sitting in a friend's car outside his grandmother's house in Queens. A vehicle pulls up, a gunman steps out with a 9mm handgun, walks right up to the side of the car, and just fires 9 shots at point-blank range.
9 shots. He is hit in the hand, his arm, his hip, both of his legs, his chest, and his left cheek. Now, just looking at his background, the drug dealing in the neighborhood, my immediate assumption would be that this was just a tragic, random occupational hazard, right?
Like a robbery gone wrong.
Exactly. Or some random neighborhood dispute. But the sources paint a much more calculated, terrifying picture.
They absolutely do. This was not random street violence. This was a highly orchestrated, targeted assassination attempt. And the alleged architect of this hit was a man named Kenneth McGriff, better known as Supreme McGriff.
Okay, so who exactly is Supreme McGriff?
Supreme McGriff was the boss of a notorious, highly organized drug syndicate known as the Supreme Team. Throughout the 80s and 90s, they controlled massive swaths of the narcotics trade in Queens. We're talking tens of millions of dollars.
They're a massive corporate entity, just an illegal one.
Exactly. They operated with corporate efficiency and extreme violence. But by the year 2000, McGriff was actually attempting to legitimize his wealth. He was trying to move into film production and the music industry.
Wait, so why is a drug kingpin who is actively trying to go legit ordering a hit on a newly signed Columbia Records rapper? Like, why risk it?
Because 50 Cent had recorded a track called Ghetto Quran, and this song wasn't just a standard rap anthem, it was a deeply specific lyrical documentary.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning he detailed the exact history, the key players, and the inner workings of the Supreme Team in the song. He was naming names.
Oh, wow. So he essentially wrote an audio history book about an active criminal enterprise.
Precisely. And to Supreme McGriff, this was not viewed as artistic storytelling. In the underworld, this is known as dry snitching.
Dry snitching.
Yeah.
Because he isn't talking to the cops, but he's putting it all out there.
Right, because federal prosecutors, when they build RICO cases, racketeering cases, they have to establish the hierarchy and the historical continuity of a criminal organization. And 50 Cent was broadcasting that exact hierarchy on a commercially distributed record.
He was basically putting a massive flashing neon spotlight on a shadow empire. That makes total sense now. From the syndicate's perspective, 50 Cent had become this massive corporate liability that needed to be liquidated immediately.
So the hit was ordered, and the alleged shooter was a man named Daryl Baum, known as Homo Baum.
And the sources mentioned that Baum was actually a close associate of Mike Tyson, right? Like a former bodyguard.
Yeah, he was, which just illustrates the sheer volatility of this whole ecosystem. But Baum actually never faced trial for the shooting because he himself was murdered just 3 weeks later.
Wow.
It was officially deemed an unrelated dispute, but, the streets whispered about retaliation for years.
So 50 Cent somehow survives, taking 9 bullets at close range, which is basically a medical miracle. He spends 13 days in the hospital. But while his body survives, his career is completely flatlined.
Yeah, Columbia Records goes into a total panic.
I mean, you can't blame them. They drop him immediately. They permanently shelve the Power of the Dollar album. But it goes way deeper than just losing his record deal. He literally gets blackballed by the entire New York City recording industry.
And the mechanism of that blackballing is really fascinating because it essentially comes down to basic insurance and liability.
Wait, insurance? How so?
Well, the studio owners in Manhattan, they saw what happened in Queens. They knew the hit had failed and that 50 Cent was still an active target. They were terrified that this violence would spill into their multi-million-dollar recording facilities.
Oh, I see. If a hit squad shoots up a vocal booth in Times Square, the studio's insurance premiums are going to skyrocket, expensive equipment gets destroyed, and innocent engineers could be killed.
Exactly. So he becomes a completely radioactive asset. Record executives who were taking him out to lavish dinners just weeks prior suddenly won't even return a phone call.
He is effectively locked out of the traditional music industry. You literally cannot walk into a building to record a song, and physically he is permanently altered from the shooting.
Yeah, one of the bullets hit his face, causing lasting damage to his jaw and actually leaving shrapnel in his tongue.
Which birthed one of the most recognizable vocal tones in modern music history, the signature lisp.
Right. The slurred, exaggerated, almost menacingly laid-back delivery that became his global trademark. It wasn't a stylistic choice initially. It was a physical necessity forged by gunfire. He had to learn how to rap all over again with a swollen jaw.
But this period of exile, this blackballing, is really the defining moment of his career because he can't walk through the front door of the industry anymore. The gatekeepers have bolted it shut. So he is forced to architect a hostile takeover through the back door.
He embraces asymmetrical warfare.
And that hostile takeover initiates what is arguably the most vicious, sustained, and strategic rivalry in hip-hop history. While he's recovering and locked out of the studios, he launches a multi-decade campaign to absolutely destroy his biggest rival.
Ja Rule and the Murder Inc. record label.
Right. And to understand the sheer scale of this war, we really have to look at how the friction started back in 1999, before the shooting even happened. And the origin story really depends entirely on whose narrative you believe.
Yeah, let's look at both sides of that. So, according to 50 Cent, the tension ignited over street politics and loyalty. He claims a friend of his, a guy named Lil Troy, allegedly robbed Ja Rule of his heavy gold chain at gunpoint in Queens.
Oh, really?
Then, a few days later, Ja Rule is at a local club called Club Emazura, and he sees 50 Cent warmly greeting the same Lil Troy. So according to 50, Ja Rule immediately assumes they were conspiring against him, and the paranoia just set in.
So that narrative frames the whole beef around authentic street interactions, robberies, things like that. But Ja Rule provides a completely different ideology in his autobiography.
He does. Ja claims the robbery did happen, but he says Supreme McGriff actually stepped in, flexed his muscle, and got the chain back immediately.
So Supreme McGriff is involved again.
Always. According to Ja, the real origin of the beef wasn't the chain, it was just plain, unadulterated jealousy.
Jealousy over what, exactly? Record sales.
Over attention. Ja claims they were both at a video shoot on Jamaica Avenue for a song called Murda for Life. 50 Cent was there, but at that point, he was just a local guy trying to get some camera time.
Right, he hadn't popped yet.
Exactly. The director, the crew, the neighborhood crowd, they were all entirely focused on Ja Rule, who was rapidly becoming a massive mainstream star. Ja alleges that 50 Cent felt intensely snubbed and ignored, and that resentment just metastasized into hatred.
I mean, whatever the true spark was, it certainly didn't stay a Cold War for long. 50 Cent escalates it to visual warfare. He drops a music video for a song called Your Life's on the Line.
Oh, that video.
In the video, he stares dead into the camera lens and screams "Murda," perfectly mocking Ja Rule's signature vocal ad-lib. And the streets were buzzing with rumors that the gold chain 50 Cent was wearing in that exact video was the very chain that had been snatched from Ja Rule.
Which is just incredible psychological tactics. He is impersonating his rival, he's mocking his brand, and he's allegedly flaunting his stolen property on camera. It is explicitly designed to provoke a response.
And it works. It successfully pulls the conflict from the studio into the physical world. In the fall of 1999, things turned violent in Atlanta.
Yeah, their mutual manager at the time, a highly respected industry figure named Shaz Slim Williams, tries to de-escalate the situation. He sets up a peace summit outside an Atlanta hotel.
But when Ja Rule arrives at this peace summit, he is reportedly carrying a baseball bat.
Which immediately communicates that diplomacy has failed. You don't bring a bat to a peace talk.
Exactly. 50 Cent takes one look at the bat, reads the aggressive body language, and doesn't even wait for a conversation. He just walks right up and punches Ja Rule squarely in the face. Or, as they said back then, he snuffed him.
And a massive melee breaks out between the two crews right there.
And 50 Cent actually claims he physically took Ja Rule's chain off his neck during that specific brawl, while Ja Rule claims 50 threw a punch and then just ran away.
Regardless of who ran, that Atlanta brawl was just a precursor to the main event, which occurred in March of 2000 at the legendary Hit Factory recording studio in New York.
The Hit Factory was the epicenter of New York music. So 50 Cent is upstairs working in a session. Members of Murder Inc., including the label head Irv Gotti and a rapper named Black Child, hear that 50's in the building.
So they rush his studio room, and absolute chaos erupts.
The violence is severe. Ja Rule allegedly hits 50 Cent over the head with a crutch.
Yeah.
And during the scuffle, Black Child pulls a knife and actually stabs 50 Cent in the back.
Stabs him right in the studio.
Yeah, 50 has to go to the hospital. He gets 3 stitches for a puncture wound. But the physical wound healed much faster than the reputational damage Murder Inc. tried to inflict on him right afterward.
Because of the order of protection?
Right. Following the stabbing, an order of protection, a restraining order was filed against Murder Inc., legally mandating they stay away from 50 Cent. And for years, Murder Inc. weaponized this. They ran to radio stations, they went to magazines, calling 50 Cent a snitch and claiming he called the cops on them so he could hide behind the law.
And that accusation is absolutely lethal in the hip-hop community. If you get branded a snitch, your street credibility is completely gone.
But our historical sources clarify the mechanics of what actually happened. 50 Cent did not call the police.
No, he didn't. During the brawl, the studio's recording engineer was actually injured. It was the studio staff who called the police to protect their facility.
Which makes sense.
And when an assault involves a weapon and a hospital visit, the state of New York files a mandatory order of protection on behalf of the victim, completely regardless of their cooperation. He had no say in it.
But, the nuance didn't matter. The stigma was out there in the streets. So 50 Cent is sitting there in 2001. He's been shot 9 times. He's been stabbed. He has no record deal. He is blackballed from commercial studios. And Murder Inc. is absolutely running the Billboard charts. How does he even fight back?
By fundamentally changing the battlefield. He launches what industry historians now refer to as the mixtape guerrilla war.
I really need you to help me understand the mechanics of this. Because in our era of Spotify and Apple Music, the whole concept of a mixtape is kind of lost. How did this actually work on a technical level?
Okay, so in the early 2000s, before streaming was a thing, the underground music economy ran on physical CDs. They were distributed hand-to-hand in barbershops, bodegas, and on Canal Street in Manhattan.
Like bootlegs.
Exactly. DJs would compile exclusive tracks and sell these CDs directly to the streets. 50 Cent, alongside his G-Unit crew Lloyd Banks, Tony Yayo, and Young Buck, they realized they didn't need a multi-million-dollar studio to reach the audience.
Right, they were locked out anyway.
So they just needed a basic recording setup and a CD burner. That's it.
So they start flooding the market with these free or super cheap mixtapes. So like 50 Cent is the future and No Mercy, No Fear. But the genius part is they weren't just recording original songs, were they?
No, they weren't. And this is where the absolute genius of his corporate sabotage comes into play. 50 Cent would take Ja Rule's biggest, most expensive radio hits, the ones with the slick, multi-million-dollar R&B production, and he would find the instrumental versions.
Because DJs used to carry vinyl singles that had the A-side with vocals, and the B-side was just the beat.
Exactly. 50 Cent would take Ja Rule's instrumental, completely strip away Ja's vocals, and rap his own incredibly gritty, violent gangsta lyrics over the exact same beat.
Wait, so he is effectively weaponizing Murder, Inc.'s own massive production budget against them entirely for free.
That is exactly what he's doing. It's a hostile takeover of a sonic brand. He was hijacking the physical infrastructure of his enemy.
That is just brilliant.
It really is. The strategy accomplished two things simultaneously. First, it mocked Ja Rule, painting him as this soft pop singer. And second, it proved to the consumer that 50 Cent's aggressive flow sounded vastly superior over Ja's own production.
He was literally stealing Ja Rule's audience right out from under him before he even had a retail album on a shelf. The streets were just devouring these tapes. And that underground seismic activity, it eventually registers on the radar of the biggest figures in the industry.
Eminem and Dr. Dre.
Right. In 2002, Eminem and Dr. Dre hear 50's mixtape, Guess Who's Back? And they are just blown away by the song structure, the melodies, and the sheer menace of his delivery.
So they fly him out to Los Angeles, and they sign him to a massive joint deal with Shady Records and Aftermath Entertainment.
Which means suddenly, this blackballed outcast has the backing of the most powerful, commercially dominant machine in the entire music industry. The balance of power shifts overnight.
And this is exactly when Ja Rule makes a catastrophic tactical error.
Oh man, he really did.
Ja Rule was feeling the intense pressure of 50's rising tide, and in this desperate attempt to assert dominance, Ja releases a diss track called Loose Change.
But he breaks the cardinal rule of hip-hop warfare.
He makes it personal with the wrong people. He doesn't just attack 50 Cent. He takes shots at Dr. Dre, he takes shots at Eminem, and catastrophically, he mentions Eminem's young daughter, Haley.
Oh, you do not bring Haley into a rap beef. That is insane.
It is the ultimate red line. Eminem is historically content to stay out of New York street rivalries, but that reference unleashed the full, unmitigated wrath of Shady Records.
Eminem and Busta Rhymes immediately drop a devastating response track called Hail Mary 2003. But it's 50 Cent who delivers the absolute kill shot with a track called Back Down.
Back Down is legendary.
The sources we reviewed describe it not just as a diss track, but as a lethal psychological dismantling. He didn't just attack Ja Rule's lyrics. He attacked his fundamental masculinity. He branded him a singing, fraudulent pop star, mimicking his voice and just laughing at him over the beat.
The song was so potent that it actually made it actively embarrassing for fans to be caught listening to Murder, Inc. in their cars.
He literally changed the cultural consensus. But what's truly wild about this era is how the federal government simultaneously and totally unwittingly acted as the anvil to 50 Cent's hammer.
The FBI gets involved.
Yes. In January of 2003, federal agents raided the Murder, Inc. offices in Manhattan. The government was investigating whether the label head, Irv Gotti, was using the record company to launder illicit drug money for Supreme McGriff.
The very man who allegedly ordered the hit on 50 Cent. It all connects.
It does. It comes full circle in the most cinematic way possible. The feds are building this massive money laundering case. And what did they use to understand the hierarchy of Supreme McGriff's gang?
They literally cite 50 Cent's song, Ghetto Quran.
That is wild.
The track that almost cost him his life became a foundational roadmap for federal investigators. They used it to map out the whole syndicate. Furthermore, the feds intercepted pager texts between Irv Gotti and Supreme McGriff.
What were they texting about?
They were discussing the funding of a straight-to-DVD movie called Crime Partners, which the government alleged was basically just a front to wash drug money.
Wow. So the raid is devastating. It freezes Murder Inc.'s bank accounts, it confiscates their hard drives, and it permanently taints their corporate reputation.
Even though Irv Gotti was eventually acquitted in 2005, the label essentially collapsed under the immense legal and financial weight of it all.
And Cyprien McGriff, he ends up sentenced to life in federal prison.
So the dual-pronged attack, 50 Cent destroying their cultural relevance, and the FBI destroying their corporate infrastructure was absolute. It was total destruction.
But let me just pause and push back on the timeline here for a second. Because during this intense escalation, peace was actually on the table. And as we know, violence is usually terrible for corporate business. Dead artists don't generate revenue.
That's true.
The sources note that the legendary minister Louis Farrakhan actually intervened. He wanted to broker a peace treaty to avoid another East Coast versus West Coast tragedy, like what happened with Biggie and Tupac.
Right, he was trying to save lives.
So he sets up a televised summit. Ja Rule goes on television, sits down, and publicly accepts the truce. So why didn't 50 Cent just shake hands, take the massive PR win, and walk away?
Because taking the truce requires validating your opponent as an equal. By refusing the Farrakhan peace treaty, 50 Cent wasn't just being stubborn, he was applying the concept of total war to the music business.
Interesting. Total war.
A treaty suggests a stalemate. 50 Cent didn't want peace. He wanted them classified as an illegitimate regime. When Ja Rule accepted the treaty on TV, 50 Cent masterfully spun that as a sign of total capitulation.
Oh, so he used Ja's desire for peace against it.
Exactly. He painted Ja as a desperate, bleeding pop star begging a religious leader to save his career. By refusing to publicly back down, 50 cemented his own image as an unstoppable, uncompromising force of nature.
The psychological dominance was just absolute. And the crazy thing is, he has never let his foot off the gas, even decades later. If you want to understand the longevity of this warfare, you just have to look at the 2018 Groupon stunt.
Oh, the Groupon stunt. It is the apex of modern weaponized trolling.
It really is. So Ja Rule books a concert at a mid-sized venue in Arlington, Texas. The ticket sales are struggling, and they end up discounted on sites like Groupon.
Okay, and 50 Cent sees this?
Right. 50 Cent, a man worth hundreds of millions of dollars at this point, logs onto Groupon and spends roughly $3,000 to purchase 200 front-row tickets at about $15 a pop.
And why does he do this?
He buys them strictly so that the first several rows of Ja Rule's concert will be completely visibly empty. He even posts photoshopped pictures of himself sitting alone in an empty arena, just smiling.
It is a devastating display of capital. He's essentially communicating, I have the financial liquidity to literally purchase your public humiliation.
And that cold, calculated demeanor persisted even up to Irv Gotti's death in 2025.
Yeah, that was brutal.
When a major industry figure passes away, even bitter rivals usually offer some basic sanitized condolences, right? 50 Cent offered none of that. He went on social media and posted, "Damn, I wanted him to see my new shows, yo." It is chillingly cold.
It really shows he never forgave them. Though Ja Rule did attempt to rewrite the history of the conflict later that same year on Carmelo Anthony's podcast.
What did he say?
Ja claimed that he was fundamentally the better rapper and that his records had aged better than 50's.
But the data provided in our sources is entirely devoid of sentiment, and it is brutally definitive.
The numbers don't lie.
No, they don't. The streaming numbers end the debate immediately. In Da Club pulls in over 900,000 daily streams on Spotify today. Ja Rule's biggest global hit, Always on Time, barely manages 226,000.
Wow, that's not even close.
Overall, 50 Cent boasts over 12 billion streams as a lead artist, compared to Ja Rule's 2 billion. The war isn't just over. The victor wrote the history books and owns the territory entirely.
And that absolute victory in the streets, combined with the unprecedented underground buzz of the mixtapes we talked about, paved the exact high-velocity runway he needed for his official commercial debut.
Which brings us to a moment of absolute musical dominance. Having neutralized his primary rival and built an army of loyal fans, 50 Cent prepares to release Get Rich or Die Tryin.
The anticipation was so feverish that the label literally had to push the release date up a full week, to February 6th, 2003.
Why did they have to push it up?
Bootlegging. We have to remember what physical bootlegging meant in 2003. When an album leaked, it didn't just mean people downloaded a file online.
Right, it was physical CDs.
Exactly. It meant illicit manufacturing plants in Brooklyn were burning tens of thousands of physical CDRs, wrapping them in plastic, and selling them on folding tables in Times Square for $5.
So if a highly anticipated album leaked a week early, it could drain millions of dollars in physical retail sales from stores like Best Buy and Tower Records.
So the label pushed the date up to stem the bleeding. They had to get it on shelves immediately.
And when the album drops, it is an absolute cultural reset. It is executive produced by Dr. Dre and Eminem. But there's also incredibly heavy lifting from a producer named Shaw Money XL.
And we really should highlight Shaw Money XL.
Absolutely, because after 50 Cent was shot and blackballed from Manhattan, it was Shaw Money who invited 50 out to his home studio in Long Island, giving him a safe haven to record when no one else would let him in the building.
That loyalty paid off, because the commercial performance of the album is staggering, even by the inflated standards of the CD era.
It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling 872,000 physical copies in its first 7 days alone.
The singles absolutely dominated global culture. In-day clubs sat at #1 for 9 straight weeks.
Everywhere you went, malls, sporting events, clubs, cars driving down the street, you heard India Club, 21 Questions, PIMP, and If I Can't. It was inescapable.
The album eventually sold 13 million copies worldwide. It is certified 9 times platinum in the United States alone.
But the question isn't just how many records he sold. It's why this specific sonic formula worked so perfectly at that exact moment in time.
That's a great point, because before Get Rich or Die Tryin', the music industry heavily favored slick, heavily polished R&B collaborations for radio play. The underground purists completely despised it, demanding gritty, authentic street narratives.
The industry was completely fractured between pop and gangster rap. You couldn't really be both.
Exactly. But what 50 Cent managed to do, utilizing the pristine cinematic production of Dr. Dre and Eminem, was marry those two competing forces perfectly.
He restored hardcore gangster rap to the absolute top of the pop charts by rapping incredibly violent, hyper-authentic street stories in impossibly catchy, radio-ready melodies.
He had an undeniable instinctual ear for a hook.
Let's examine one of those melodic tracks in detail, because I think it says so much about his mindset. The song 21 Questions, featuring the late, great Nate Dogg.
A classic.
It's a surprisingly soft, vulnerable love song about loyalty. If I fell off tomorrow, would you still love me? Now, considering 50 Cent's entire brand up to this point is built on wearing a Kevlar bulletproof vest, holding a gun on his album cover, and just destroying Ja Rule.
Right.
My immediate assumption would be that the record label executives forced him to record a soft pop track to appease the radio programmers.
It is a totally logical assumption, but the reality is the exact opposite, and it speaks volumes about his strategic foresight.
Wait, really? The label didn't push for it?
No, Dr. Dre absolutely hated 21 Questions. He did not want it on the album at all.
The greatest producer in hip-hop history tried to kill the song.
He tried to pull it right off the track list. Dre was looking at the sequencing and asked 50, how are you going to position yourself as this ultimate gangsta figure, the guy who survived 9 bullets, and then put out this sappy, vulnerable love song? It ruins the brand.
Wow. So Dre thought it was a liability.
But 50 Cent pushed back aggressively, and his response to Dre is, I think, one of the most insightful quotes of his entire career.
What did he say?
He told him, I've always had to be 2 people since I was a kid, just to get by. To me, that's not diversity, it's necessity.
Wow. That is profound. That's not diversity, it's necessity.
He understood human psychology better than the label executives did. He knew that to be a true, globally resonant crossover superstar, he needed to show dimension. If you only project invincibility, you just become a cartoon character.
That is so true. By showcasing that duality, the ruthless survivor who is also capable of profound vulnerability and insecurity in a relationship, he made the album a 3-dimensional masterpiece. It appealed to entirely different demographics simultaneously.
He knew his consumer base better than the architects of the industry did. And that exact instinct, the ability to read the board, understand leverage, and pivot when necessary, is what allowed him to evolve far beyond the vocal booth.
Because as we transition and dive into his corporate evolution, it becomes clear pretty quickly that you don't stay incredibly wealthy just by selling compact discs.
No, the margins eventually shrink. People stop buying CDs.
Right. To survive long term, you have to pivot. You have to metamorphose into a mogul.
Curtis Jackson recognized very early on that musical fame was not the end goal. Fame was merely a lever you pull to acquire equity. He refused to just be an employee of the culture.
The most famous example of this is his involvement with vitamin water. The standard playbook for a massive celebrity in 2004 was to take like a $2 million check to hold a bottle of soda in a television commercial.
A flat endorsement fee. You do the shoot, you get the check, you go home.
Exactly. But 50 Cent approaches Glacé, the parent company of vitamin water. And instead of just asking for a fee to promote their Formula 50 grape flavor, he demands an equity stake in the company. He wants actual ownership.
Which was incredibly rare for a rapper at that time.
And when the Coca-Cola company inevitably purchases Glacé in 2007 for a staggering $4.1 billion, 50 Cent's minority equity stake reportedly nets him a payout in the neighborhood of $100 million.
After taxes.
After taxes. He utilized his cultural ubiquity to force his way onto the cap table of a rapidly scaling beverage startup.
Whoa.
And he repeated variations of this model with his own headphone line, SMS audio, and his various liquor partnerships later on.
But I'd argue his most impressive corporate conquest is his absolute domination of television. He doesn't just act in shows. He establishes his own production company, G-Unit Film and Television.
Right. And he partners with the Starz Network to executive produce a crime drama called Power.
And Power wasn't just a hit. It was a foundational subscriber driver for the entire Starz network. People subscribed just to watch it. And true to form, he didn't just let it end after 6 seasons. He franchised it.
He built a cinematic universe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He spun off multiple interconnected series like Ghost, Raising Kanan, and Force.
He practically kept the lights on at Starz for a decade. He also produces BMF Black Mafia Family, the legal drama for life on ABC, and unscripted series like Hip Hop Homicides on WeTV.
It's a massive slate. And then in 2023, he leverages all that proven ratings data to secure a massive multi-show broadcast direct deal with FOX. We are talking scripted dramas, live-action comedies, animated series.
Plus, he diversifies into audio with the highly acclaimed Surviving El Chapo podcast, and he even ventures into the horror film space with directors like Eli Roth, producing films like Skill House. He basically built a self-sustaining content factory.
He really did.
Okay, so this is where I need you to help me untangle a massive contradiction. Because we just outlined a man who made $100 million from a water company, sold 13 million copies of his debut album, and engineered a billion-dollar television universe.
Right.
Yet, in July of 2015, Curtis Jackson officially files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
He did. That brings us back to where we started.
To the average person, filing for bankruptcy means you are broke. It means the repo men are coming for your cars, the bank is foreclosing on your house, and you have failed financially. Was Curtis Jackson actually broke?
No. Emphatically no. To understand the brilliance of this maneuver, we really have to look at the massive legal and financial storm system that was converging on him in the summer of 2015.
He was getting hit from all sides, wasn't he?
Exactly. He was facing a catastrophic $7 million defamation judgment. He had been sued by a woman named Lastonia Leviston, who notably was the ex-girlfriend of another rap rival, Rick Ross.
Okay, what happened there?
Well, 50 Cent had acquired a private sex tape of hers. He doctored it to insert himself as a crude commentator and posted it online without her permission, purely as a tactic to humiliate Rick Ross.
That is awful. So she sued him.
And the jury found him liable for severe emotional distress. So there is a $7 million judgment right there.
Just sitting there waiting to be collected.
On top of that, he had significant business losses in a failed clothing line venture, and he was staring down another massive multi-million-dollar judgment from a lawsuit involving a former business partner, Sleek Audio.
Wow. So the liabilities were compounding at a terrifying rate. The walls were closing in, and the courts were demanding immediate payouts.
So he files for bankruptcy, but let's clarify the mechanism here. How does filing for bankruptcy actually help a guy who has millions in the bank?
All right, because usually they just take your stuff.
It comes down to the critical difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Chapter 7 is what most people picture. It's liquidation. The court seizes your assets, sells your house, auctions your cars, pays off your creditors pennies on the dollar, and you start from zero.
But 50 Cent did not file Chapter 7.
No, he filed Chapter 11.
Okay, so how does Chapter 11 work as a legal defense?
Chapter 11 is a strategic reorganization tool. It's typically utilized by massive multinational corporations like airlines or retail chains when they face a liquidity crunch. By filing Chapter 11, 50 Cent essentially slammed his foot down on a federal tactical pause button.
A pause button.
Yes. The moment you file, the court issues what's called an automatic stay. This immediately halts all pending creditor lawsuits and collections. The plaintiffs who just won millions against him couldn't legally seize a single dollar from his bank accounts or put a lien on his house.
Wow. So he used the federal bankruptcy court as a defensive moat against civil lawsuits.
Precisely. It kept the creditors trapped outside the gates. Most importantly, Chapter 11 allows the debtor in possession in this case, Curtis Jackson, to retain absolute control of his assets and his ongoing income streams, like his massive TV royalties.
So he didn't lose his shows.
No, it just bought him the essential commodity of time. Time to restructure, time to appeal, and time to negotiate manageable repayment plans without having his empire violently dismantled overnight.
That is just corporate martial arts. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But there was a major PR cost, right? Because the bankruptcy filings are public record, and the media combed through them. And they exposed some really wild details about his monthly cash burn.
Oh, the court documents were highly revealing. They showed he had roughly $108,000 in monthly personal expenses.
Including, according to the filings, $5,000 a month just for gardening and property maintenance at his massive Connecticut mansion.
Which the media definitely used to mock him, but financial analysts looking at those exact same documents sought a masterclass in wealth preservation.
What did they see that the media missed?
For instance, the filings revealed that his $100 million vitamin water payout had been meticulously structured through various trusts and corporate entities in a way that severely limited its exposure to personal civil judgments.
Oh. So he had ring-fenced his biggest asset long before the lawsuits even materialized.
Exactly. And in the end, the Chapter 11 strategy worked flawlessly. In 2016, the federal judge approved a reorganization plan for him to pay his creditors $23 million over the course of 5 years.
But he didn't even take 5 years to do it, did he?
No, he didn't. He paid the entire $23 million debt off early, within a matter of months.
How did he manage that so fast?
He was aided by a substantial settlement he won from a separate legal malpractice case against his former lawyers. So he literally walked out of bankruptcy court with his television empire entirely intact, his masters untouched, and his real estate secure.
That is unbelievable. So it was never a failure. It was a highly calculated, ruthlessly efficient legal maneuver to protect his wealth from catastrophic judgments. He treated himself not as a vulnerable individual, but as a multinational corporation that was simply too big to fail.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Which provides the perfect lens to view his latest and honestly perhaps most impactful evolution. Once his wealth was thoroughly secured and the legal landmines were cleared from the board, Curtis Jackson made a massive pivot.
He turned his strategic mind toward empowering the next generation.
Right. Specifically so they wouldn't have to face the desperate, violent choices he was forced to make at age 12 in Queens. This brings us to the G-Unity Foundation.
This is a huge part of his legacy now. He founded it to promote a concept he calls conscious capitalism, focusing heavily on academic enrichment, social skills, and leadership for youth residing in high-need, historically under-resourced communities.
The flagship program of this foundation appears to be the G-Unity Business Lab, which he launched in partnership with the Houston Independent School District.
Right, HISD. The Business Lab is a fascinating educational intervention. It's not just a generic, after-school program where kids just hang out. It is a highly focused, year-long academic course centered entirely on entrepreneurship.
And the foundation partners closely with parents, school administrators, and local community service providers. So what exactly are they teaching these kids in this lab?
They are partnering with organizations like the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, or NFTE. They run intensive programs, including summer biz camps. The curriculum is designed to equip high-needs students with actual functional business acumen.
Like real-world skills.
Yes. They learn how to draft a business plan, how to understand profit margins, how to market a product, and how to structure an LLC. The goal is to give them the literal tools to start real companies and build generational wealth.
That is incredible. And the foundation's footprint extends far beyond just Houston classrooms, too. They have partnered with the NBA Foundation to expand their reach. They've raised significant capital for the Houston Children's Charity.
They do massive charity drives, too.
Yeah, during the holidays, they executed a huge Toys for All drive in Houston that provided aid to over 50,000 families. They work consistently with Feeding America to combat food insecurity. And they've even partnered internationally with the United Nations World Food Program to provide critical famine relief in Somalia.
The sheer scale of the philanthropic infrastructure he has built is immense. It operates with the same sprawling efficiency as his television empire.
But looking at the entirety of his life from start to finish, it feels like a massive, almost incomprehensible psychological leap.
In what way?
Well, how does a man go from writing a track called How to Rob, surviving 9 bullets in a drug feud, and orchestrating the brutal destruction of Murder, Inc., to sitting in a bright classroom in Houston teaching teenagers about the nuances of conscious capitalism? What is the connective tissue here? How did these two drastically different versions of Curtis Jackson connect?
It's a great question. But if you look closely at the mechanics of his survival, the through line is actually completely unbroken. Curtis Jackson has always been, at his absolute core, a brilliant businessman. When he was 12 years old, in the crack era of Jamaica, Queens, his business just happened to be illicit, because that was the only visible avenue for economic survival in his environment at that time.
Right?
He had to learn the ruthless mechanics of supply and demand, inventory management, risk assessment, and territorial defense the hard way, on the street.
And the stakes for failing those lessons were literally life and death.
Precisely. What he is doing now with the G-Unity Foundation is taking that exact same strategic, analytical business mind, but he's equipping these kids with the legal corporate tools and the academic frameworks they need to succeed in the legitimate economy.
He's translating street survival into corporate literacy.
Exactly. He's making sure they understand equity, capitalization, and market share so they don't have to resort to the streets to learn how to be moguls. He is teaching them how to build generational wealth in the boardroom, effectively saving them from the crucible that forged him.
That is an incredible, profound perspective. Let's pull all of these threads together because we've gone on quite a journey today. We've tracked Curtis Jackson from the gritty, perilous streets of Southside Jamaica, Queens, where he miraculously survived a targeted assassination attempt of 9 bullets.
We watched him get blackballed by the frightened gatekeepers of the New York music industry, only to reinvent the rules of engagement, utilizing physical mixtapes to launch a guerrilla war that utterly dismantled Murder, Inc.
We analyzed the alchemy of Get Rich or Die Tryin, a 9 times platinum cultural reset that proved you could blend extreme gangsta authenticity with undeniable pop melodies, provided you understood the duality of your own persona.
And we broke down the mechanics of how he used corporate law, specifically a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing, not as a white flag of defeat, but as a tactical defensive shield to protect his sprawling television and business empire from a perfect storm of civil litigation.
And finally, we saw him channel that exact same strategic genius into the G-Unity Foundation, building a philanthropic empire dedicated to teaching the next generation how to navigate the corporate world without having to endure the violence he did.
It is ultimately a masterclass in adaptation and willpower.
It really is.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We started this conversation talking about armor, about the necessity of putting on a hardened persona just to survive a literal war zone. When you look at his incredible journey from the dangerous corners of Queens to the executive boardrooms of FOX and the classrooms of Houston, you really have to wonder.
Was the bulletproof, ruthless, unapologetic gangster known globally as 50 Cent simply a highly effective, necessary suit of armor that Curtis Jackson had to construct and wear just to survive his environment?
Exactly. And as he steps deeper and deeper into the roles of philanthropist, television executive, and community mentor, are we watching that armor finally slowly come off, revealing the brilliant, strategic, and highly empathetic mind of the real Curtis Jackson that was operating beneath the Kevlar all along?
It's a fascinating question about the nature of identity, performance, and survival.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of a mogul. Take that thought with you. Keep analyzing the mechanics behind the headlines. Keep questioning the narratives you are fed, and we will catch you on the next one.
And that brings another quiet episode of Sleepcast to an end. Thank you for spending this time with us. We hope our two hosts helped you relax, slow your thoughts, and perhaps drift gently off to sleep. New episodes of Sleepcast are released every day, 7 days a week, all year round. Follow Sleepcast on the podcast app you are using now, so new episodes are added automatically, and you can be notified whenever another wonderfully boring story is released. Until next time, sleep peacefully and good night. Sleepcast, probably the most boring podcast in the world.